All right.
Right.
Welcome. We are back for another week here on our live show. Myself and Chubby. Chubby, always good to see you.
Same here.
Yeah, today is an interesting topic. It's I was going to say exciting, but I think it's kind of one of those topics that people don't really talk about much when the momentum dies. I had the idea to talk about this today because it's something I've been dealing with recently. I personally had a bunch of momentum going, and then I hit a lull a couple weeks ago, and I just wanted to kind of talk today about going through that and how I my process and how I kind of worked through it and came back stronger this week. Um, but
Yeah, definitely something a lot of people quietly struggle with, and you can sometimes see that when someone suddenly disappears, they stop posting, and they think it's just, oh, I'm just gonna take a 2-week break, and that ends up, like never returning. So I think definitely an important topic to talk more about, and maybe sharing a couple of really cool tools that you might have used as well, and also some of the things that I have under my sleeve. So yeah.
it's great. I'm excited to learn about these. I know you know your stuff. Um, cool. So yeah, I think one of the things that we can kind of address is like what what that looks like for most creators. I know for myself, like um, I knew that I was going to have these ups and downs, um, and even telling myself that because people try to warn you about it. You'll have like that initial excitement, that sort of honeymoon phase, and when you're first joining the creator economy, and you think you're gonna like take the world by storm, and you're gonna, um, you know, get a huge following because you're gonna put a lot of effort into your content, and everybody's just gonna love it, and you know, sing
And there'll
kumbaya.
be like lines of people buying your stuff.
Yeah. And you might get some initial feedback, friends and family. They kind of see like what you're putting out there, and they're like, "Hey, that's great," um, and they'll support you. But then you have to re-strategize in terms of how you're going to reach a wider audience, how you're going to add value to strangers' lives, and give them reason to support you and to follow you. And I think there's always kind of iterations of that you go through. Just to give some context, like for my own product, um, I'm a big believer in starting your own business, pursuing your own passions in life. And I can hit hard with that message, but not everyone's in the same place. And I think a big part of the dip that I had recently was having to acknowledge that I need to show up for people where they're at, and I need to create products for people that can help them get from whatever step they're at now just to the next step. Like I can't be saying, take the leap like off this cliff with me. I have to like build a bridge, and I have to say like follow me across it. And so it's part of that, doing the work of building that bridge for people, that is the hard labor of trying to build an online business, trying to build a personal brand, that I think a lot of creators don't realize going into it. They think they can just have fun creating content and it's just all going to magically come together. But it's strategic. You have to really plan for that.
Absolutely. Like, I think people are sold on this. We always come back to this topic of like, just be yourself. And yeah, I mean, it's really important to give like your unique energy and everything that's unique about you, that layer onto your brand. But it doesn't mean you get to just wing it and randomly show up and talk about stuff without considering. And I always talk about this because it's messaging, right? How that comes across on the other side. Like I could tell Andrew all about an amazing program that I have that would help him heal his money wounds from his past, if he has no idea how that would help him, or even has ever considered that he has money stories, and then feels the pain enough to invest. There's no point for me yapping about it. So that's, I think, an important part of an entrepreneur's journey when they start posting, when they realize that it's not just consistently posting stuff, that it's a lot more about the marketing instead of just sharing our knowledge. And most people, burn out and then give up after like the first 2-3 months. So I think one thing at least, we can always acknowledge is that, your momentum was pretty long. It was like more than a year, right?
Yeah. Yeah, obviously there are ups and downs within that. But it's kind of that concept of having to like accept this new reality, and it's like a death and a rebirth. You have this vision of how you imagine things are going to go, and then you have to accept that it's not going to necessarily go exactly the way you planned, and that can sting a little bit. And I think it's okay to kind of lick your wounds for a minute, but you have to stay in the game. And I think that's what you're talking about with the burnout. A lot of creators kind of just ghost the internet, right? They just kind of disappear from their followers. And when things aren't going their way, they kind of get their feelings hurt and they disappear. And I think that also cascades into their following, because people are there supporting them, and now they don't know if they can count on that person to be there. And that's, I think, where the consistency factor plays in. And if you're trying to build something, you want
Right.
people to know you're going to be there in a year or 2 years, and your messaging is
Yeah.
going to stay
I was
relatively.
going to say, like, if you want to build that trust, the first thing is consistency and congruency, right? When you consistently show up, encouraging, inspiring, educating, inviting people, that is already building trust, right? Because when people see your face, that already makes that familiar to them. So it's just psychology. The second thing is when they know how many people just randomly pop up on the internet for 2-3 months, but they see you as the one who constantly shows up, keeps delivering, and not just the content, things like masterclasses, webinars, events, all kinds of different parts of your sales process. The reason I'm not like I'm no longer I had that stage. I've been in business for more than 4 years now. But the reason I learn to detach from whether I make the sale or not, I mean, I show up the best way I can, is because I know that maybe some people need to come back, hear the message, hear to be invited 3 times, 4 times, 5 times until they have the budget, until the problem is, painful enough, or that they trust me already, trust the process, so they can invest. And all of this comes because I learned how to regulate the only thing that I'm in control over, which is me and my nervous system and my belief systems, right? Which is, I think, where everything starts, and I think not a lot is talked about in the creator economy, how business is ultimately from the inside out.
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry, I lost train of thought there. I was going to say, this was it. Showing up. I mentioned to you before this call that I, wasn't feeling well today, but I promoted it. We said we were going to be out here on our live call on Wednesday, and I don't know who's going to show up. I don't know who's counting on us to be there. So just deciding last minute, you know what, Chubby, let's just do it tomorrow. Who cares, right? I think that if you're not serious about it, if you're not committed to it, I think it shows, and people start to feel like, oh, okay, maybe these guys will be live this week, maybe they won't. If it comes up in my feed, maybe I'll show up.
Yeah, and it's
So
not just that, it's also how that impacts your trust with yourself. Because ultimately, I think what we are building with consistency and grit, I would also mention that word because I know that that's one of the, all across all kinds of psychological research on high performers, was shown to be the one quality that leads to success. By basically keeping your promises, what you are saying is that you're the type of person who does what they say they would do. And if we really think about it, like, yes, you might not be in your best mood right now. You might not be able to like shine or, bright and unicorns and everything, but people need to see that part of Andrew as well. And the more authentic you shine, the more authentically you're able to show up as, not thinking, oh my God, so people would like, I have to show up all the time in my perfect energy with 100%. That also means people can trust you more because you show up as a real human.
Yeah, I think you touched upon some aspects of perfectionism, that if I can't show up in my best, as my best, then I'm not going to show up at all. And that leads to people disappearing, like we said. So you have to like show up as you are sometimes and just do the best you can and just live to fight another day, you know?
Absolutely. I think it's like rewriting the rule of what consistency means, because what my 100% is always a relative to the present moment. As in, maybe today, I don't know, it's like 1 a.m. I'm not like full of energy by the end of the day here in Japan, but I'm still showing up with my 100% of what I have. And if this is only the 10% what I could do, when it's, it's as if when we were like holding lives in my morning, then I can be okay with that, because at least I keep my promises. And I've been really hard on this. And the reason I think I had an easier time to deal with burnout, and I'm not saying I'm not having other problems in my business, was that for me, integrity is my top 3 values. And I think that's what got me from where I was, working class parents, zero money, tutoring at the age of 17 for $1 per hour, to where I am right now.
Yeah, that grit factor for sure. What do you say to people who say they want to take a conscious pause? I think that there's a thin line between like a silent fade and a conscious pause, like the difference between
I love
reflecting
that word.
on your messaging, like you say, or uh, your whole brand and product, and versus like you're just kind of feeling sorry for yourself and you disappear.
First of all, I love the word conscious pause. I think that's a great word to use. I'm gonna have to remember it. Quit, burn down your business, give up. I'm kidding. I think it's really about knowing yourself and knowing how resilient you are. Because so many people aren't aware of the fact that when they say that it's just gonna be like 3 weeks, or it's just gonna be a month, and I'm not like, we are not saying that things don't happen, right? We can have people die in our family, you can have relationship issues, so many things can happen. Life is lifing. But I think what allows us to run a business is that we don't always have to work to get that cash flow. As in, let's say you can get to a point when it's like you really focus on showing up live for your clients for 3 months, and the rest of it is just focusing on other projects. And yeah, but going back to the original question, what I always do is that I commit to how much time I'm giving myself, but I'm also committing to coming back. So this is going to be 3 weeks. And if it's the 1st of May here now, then on the 22nd of May, I'm back with my full 100% as I can, as much as I can. That really helps me anchor that fact that whatever happens, I'm giving myself 3 weeks off, taking time to kind of realign, right? And everything else that people usually say. Take a rest, give myself that rest, so I'm not in survival mode when I'm running my business, but I'm also committing to coming back, because that's usually what doesn't happen. And if anyone knows how the brain works, when I teach people about how to show up with more congruence, more confidence, and more conviction, it's about habits. So if we get out of the habit of showing up, then that's going to be easier for us to stay there. So I always think what we need is long-term thinking and realizing how taking a break and then leaving it there takes a lot more energy, and then to come back than sustaining that habit and then getting back as quickly as we can.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I wanted to circle back to something earlier, which is you are in Tokyo. I don't think people realize what time of night it is there for you. It's 1:15 in the
Yeah, it's
morning.
1:15, yeah,
Yeah.
1:18.
But you're still here, and I think it can take a lot of effort to do what we're doing and to try to get some growth on the internet, to get some traction. But you do have to take time off. Like you said, I think the important point you just made, which was setting dates. So being able to honor your word and stick to doing the things you say you're going to do. If you're showing up every week and you tell people, and people know you show up every week, and you tell them, I'm going to take 3 weeks off because everybody needs time off. Everyone understands that. When you set a date, those people who have been showing up and watching you every week, they're going to know that you mean what you say, and they're going to expect you to be back in 3 weeks. So it's fine. It's just having a plan, having dates, and sticking to them, I think is important for not sort of drifting away.
Totally.
Yeah.
Like, showing up means I show up no matter what. As in, when I'm not winning, when I'm not making that so much progress, visible progress, when I'm not making the money, that cash flow isn't coming, I still show up.
Yeah. That winning, people, the word dopamine, the brain chemical dopamine, everyone wants to talk about that now, right? Everyone's becoming aware of how much our behavior is influenced by that. When you start building online, it's all dopamine. And right, like you're so excited. Anytime you start something new, it's so exciting. And people come back every day to social media to try to get that hit. And when they don't get it, they start to get down on themselves. They start to feel like a failure. They start to, think they're doing something wrong, or, what's the point? And that's when they quit, when they're not getting that hit. And I think that's why we talk about mission so much, right? Like having that plan in mind, like what you're actually out here to achieve. And hopefully it's for more than just your own aggrandizement. It's for helping other people, or, for sharing some knowledge or skills with the world, to entertain, whatever. But coming back to that mission is, I think, what carries you through those times when you're not getting that dopamine hit.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I think there's a huge misunderstanding about what dopamine is, and if people know how to leverage it, they can like get back on track a lot faster. Dopamine is supposed to be the neurochemical that gives you a boost of energy when there is an expectation of something happening. So when you can, this is something our business coach, when I signed up for my business coaching program in 2021, he said that on day one. There's like a whole video on this in the program. And he says, anchor this feeling of excitement that you have right now while watching module one, because this is going to be ups and downs. This is going to be whirlwinds. This is going to be crazy, all kinds of learnings about yourself, shedding, taking the onions off, and everything else, crying, jumping, exciting times, and everything else. And what he said was, when you're able to get back into this energy of why you started and being excited about running that business of yours, that business of your dreams, sharing your passion, your gifts, your experience, that's what allows you to get back that dopamine when you're in that expectation phase. So that's one thing that I think isn't talked about enough. And also, yeah, everybody learns their own lessons. So when someone starts out as a business owner, we all face difficulties, we all face obstacles, and it's because it's a new territory. Like, for example, many people I know are first generation entrepreneurs. I'm a first generation entrepreneur. No one understands what I'm doing. Everybody thinks I'm crazy doing this for this long. And no one has to. Like, other people don't need to understand what you're doing. If anyone's listening to this and feels like, why no one understands why I'm doing this? But it's new territory. And every time you kind of hit that wall, that means that you are stepping outside of that, what you would deem as comfortable. And we need to build new skills, not just the soft skills that we talk about today, like resilience or consistency, but also skills like what does it mean to be running a business? So if I'm looking around and see people in their first year of business, many times I honestly question if they are running a business at all, because some of them post some amazing stuff that they just found, that they researched about, and yeah, they get the likes, they get the accolades, right? They get the saves, they get the comments. We talked about this, and people love this because they love making a difference. A lot of the people that we speak to in our content, purpose driven entrepreneurs, they love when people are grateful for the help, when they are grateful for the reminders. But I don't think sharing information that would people be able to like ask any sort of AI about or look up on Google would build a business. And I think that's what a lot of people hit a wall against, right? About that they think they have to be the expert in their content. When it's, yes, you need to keep sharing about your expertise, but not about the, we need to take off the coaching hat. We need to take off the entrepreneur hat in that sense, or the expert hat, and put on the marketing hat. So when people start with the wrong idea of what it means to run a business with so much saturation, that already causes a lot of burnout.
Yeah, you touched upon a good point there. Giving away free information can be helpful if it's aligned with your products and services. If you run a laundromat or, let's say a dry cleaning service, and next to you, next door is a sandwich shop, and somebody walking by sees you're eating that sandwich inside and comes in and says, "Hey, how are the sandwiches next door?" And you say, "Oh, they're pretty good." And they say, "Oh, thanks, I appreciate it." That doesn't mean that person's going to now become a customer of your dry cleaning service just because you gave them a tip about sandwiches.
You're
You know,
actually marketing to the sandwich shop.
yeah. So when people create posts and they write about somebody else's podcast or they break down somebody else's book, I
Or
mean,
they
those
write a
other,
thread about Andrew Huberman.
yeah. So it lends authority and advertises for that other person. And people might go out and buy their book. Great. But how does that help you? Do you have a business? I mean, it's nice. It feels good to help people, certainly. And I don't discourage that. But don't be surprised when you're not getting any sales, when that person who you helped isn't necessarily buying your products and services because your products and services have nothing to do with the topic you're writing about.
That's right. And I think, it's like we haven't really talked about this whole niche thing, and I don't even know what your opinion is. Because I do think at least we need to be. I'm not a big fan of like using a niche that box you into like something that you will have to do for the rest of your life. But you've got to talk about problems. Business is ultimately about solving problems. So you cannot just show up and talk about how great of a hypnotherapist you are, or how amazing neurosciences that you've just discovered, or so many different people talk about their expertise, but they forget that it's what when you said we want to meet people where they are at. So people are online, potential clients, seeking answers, right? How is this relevant to me? And they keep checking out posts, and their subconscious constantly asks, how is this relevant to me? How is this relevant to me? Should I still be staying here? Should I be still investing my time, effort, and attention on this video, on this live, for example, on this post? Should I invest energy in attending that webinar, signing up for that program? And it's something people forget, that we want the ultimate thing that brings in sales is relevance. In 2025, with so much saturation, more and more people coming into the creator economy, just showing up as the expert doesn't mean you are going to get the clients. And ultimately, running a business is about solving problems. So we've got to get clear on the exact specific problems that we are helping other people solve. Your expertise is the vehicle that helps people experience the solution, not the niche itself. So hypnotherapy is not a niche. Helping people find a partner through hypnotherapy, or helping people, entrepreneurs, I don't know, break through their money ceiling from 10K to 200K is a niche. But hypnotherapy itself is a vehicle, it's not a niche. And I think this is where people are already wasting a lot of their time trying to prove how their expertise is the best, instead of connecting that expertise with the problem and then promoting the solution.
Right. And what's the best steps that you would advise someone to do that? How do you connect those two?
So get clear on what problems you people have, or what problems you want to solve. And then the best way to do it is through experimentation, right? Testing it out. What type of problems, when you talk about them, people resonate with in your posts? What titles, thumbnails, hooks, or anything else resonates? What we want to do with messaging, what I do with my students, especially if it's like a 101, or they do my we call it max impact, that's like the second level of support, is that we constantly check the audience's feedback. So when someone is starting out, the best thing to do is just to put out content after content and trying to check which of the problems, desires, everything else that's relevant to what leads to a sale. There are all kinds of elements of it. Which one resonates the most, and then double down on the one that pops out, because that's obviously the thing that the audience, the ideal clients, said that they would, not said, but did resonate with. Behavior tells us a lot more about what people are actually interested in, what they want, than what they say. But that's another topic for another live, how sometimes surveys can be misleading, but people's behavior never lies. So I think I would start there, and then thinking how your expertise, whatever skill set you have, is able to get people from the problem they're experiencing to the desire that they want to experience. That's ultimately messaging, connecting people with where they are to where they want to be.
I think that's good advice. You mentioned in there, I don't know if you said rebuild or iteration, but it's funny because failure is such a big topic now. Everybody likes to say you have to fail to succeed, and failure is growth.
And I think that's where people are, everybody likes to say it.
Exactly. You beat me to it. Everyone likes to talk about that, but when really faced with it, I've seen so many creators try to start a business. They have an idea, a product, an offer, and they build their first thing and it doesn't work and they're gone. That's it. So they love to talk about it, but they didn't iterate. They didn't, take that feedback and figure out how to make something better or something different. They just quit. And I think that's the big difference between the people you see succeed, the ones who can adapt, and the ones who just are maybe a little overly sensitive Their ideas become their identity. And if their idea isn't well received right out of the gate, then they're shattered and they're gone.
Right. When sometimes it's people have amazing ideas, it's just really learning how to communicate that, how to communicate that in a way that's relevant, how to communicate that to the right people. It's, going back to analogies, you don't want to sell luxurious apartments in the biggest slums of your city, because that's not where people are hanging out who you want to help. So, people are not going to be posting like Tesla ads on TikTok, because assuming, TikTok is often used by people who might not, be interested in having a Tesla, let alone have the means to invest in it. So I think that's where we want to be very intentional, but learning about the role of failure and what that really means. And it always has two sides, because it's one thing to fail, but failing more doesn't necessarily guarantee anything. What we need to do is to have the discipline to say what worked, what didn't work, why didn't this work, what did I learn from this. So one thing that's important for us to do is to stop looking at evidence that we aren't good enough just because an idea, a post, an event, or anything else we hold or we offer doesn't work. And it's working with the subconscious beliefs. It's learning how to rewrite them, how to make sure that those automatic wiring that we learn through school, through education, that tells us that you constantly have to perform, you have to be the best, you have to get the A's, is not what actually learning is. Because what are you learning when everything goes well? What room is there for you to grow? What room is there for you to learn anything new? I just posted about this a few days ago, and I said, I don't fail because the gurus tell me that that's the recipe for success. I fail because I know if I don't fail, if I don't experiment, I don't like to use the word failure, then I'm never going to be feeling the pain enough to reiterate. And that is the real gift of failing, allowing you to feel that pain, to say, maybe this is not going well. Maybe this theory that I had just proven not to be correct. So I can reiterate and try a different path.
Yeah. I mean, a common expression is, it's about the journey, not the destination. And as you were talking, I thought of the fact that I mentioned a death earlier, and a rebirth. A lot of times we have this idea of how things are going to go. We have this identity of ourself. And when we get that feedback from the world, sometimes we have to change, we have to adapt. And it can sting going through that metamorphosis, but perhaps that really is the gift. Maybe that is the journey, that is life. It's that constant adaptation, that rebirthing in a sense. And we miss out if we quit in that phase, when we're, if we're a phoenix and we're in the ashes and we walk away before we've had a chance to rise again. I think you really miss the point of life, perhaps.
Right. You would be just a featherless chicken walking around and not a beautiful phoenix, right?
Exactly. Well, he said something else that I really liked there, which was, you talked about selling luxury cars in like a lower income area, and sometimes you just haven't found the right audience for your product, and that's fine. I think it's important to stick with it, because sometimes you can end up finding the right audience. But we tell all these stories online about people who did something offbeat, these people who thought outside the box. People like to talk about Steve Jobs and Elon Musk, and with Apple, think different. So those are the stories we celebrate. Entrepreneurs, people who've never done it before, when they go out there and want to start a business, those are the stories they're trying to recreate. They're usually not necessarily interested in doing the thing that's proven. Because a lot of businessmen, if you talk to them, they want to own the laundromat. They want to own the car wash. They want to own fast food chain franchise because those business models are proven.
Right.
They're not trying. What's that?
Coffee shops. One of the easiest ways to earn a lot of money, right?
Yeah. So those aren't sexy stories. People don't talk about those stories. So the people who come into entrepreneurship for the first time, they're playing on hard mode, and I think it can be a rude awakening for them when they get in there and they have to adapt. They have to learn, like, hey, I have to find the right product market fit. I have to understand my customer needs, and I have to find the right audience for my products. And there's a lot to learn, and those are just a few things. But um, you know, they are operating on hard mode, and I think that's because of the stories that we recycle of these people who kind of put a dent in the universe, as Steve Jobs liked to put it, because those are the people who make change. And I think people, when they start out, a lot of us are dreamers. We want to make change. We're not in it necessarily to just prove we can, open a coffee shop, because who cares, right?
I mean, you can if that's what someone's dream is, of course.
No, all right. You joke, I joke. I mean, who cares in the sense that, like,
Yeah,
you're typically not gonna be, they're not gonna write biographies about you because you create a
yeah.
coffee shop,
But I mean,
unless
I've
you create
I've
Starbucks.
heard, like, let's say, um, indigenous people build, like, having an indigenous restaurant in LA, and then like bringing life to the indigenous community in the neighborhood. So if someone's purpose is that, we are not saying that that shouldn't be right. So this live is not about don't open a coffee shop if that's your biggest dream. Don't quote us on that. Yeah, or like think about every second person has a black and white branding, like colors, presumably because Danco has a black and white branding. And I'm like, you don't need to be the next Danco. We already have one. We need the next you, as in, we need you to be you and come up with your own idea of how you want to make a difference. And I know it's always harder, right? Because in Japanese, there is a saying that is very often used. It's a collectivist society here that says, it's pretty brutal, that says the nail that sticks out gets hammered down. So it's obviously a lot harder to own what is unique about ourselves, our own unique gifts and passions and skills. But there's so many success stories around how, when you're able to find that, again, unique solution that then you position as the solution that satisfies the audience's needs and wants and problems and desires and everything else that we talk about, you have a $1 million idea. It's all about learning how to, as you said, adapt. It's like a dance between me and the audience, learning what resonates, what doesn't. Because I could talk about my love of, I don't know, behavioral economics, or how I loved reading history books. If that doesn't resonate with my audience, I could post about it 1,000 times. It's not going to get traction. It's not going to build connection. It's not going to build trust with me or anything. So this is where I think this whole idea of like, oh, just be yourself, is where people are tripping up, because it's a lot more about learning how the audience resonates with what I put out there.
Yeah. And just to play devil's advocate, as you have, it's okay that people, if they want to create content just for fun and entertain as a hobby, that's fine. Do that. There's plenty of people on social media doing that. But our audience, the people I think who showed up here today, they're interested in being a creator and as a profession, and starting an online business. So there's a distinction. You have to dial those things in, the things that you're talking about if you want to really have a
Yeah.
business.
And it's about the reps. Oh, and also knowing how to position it in a way that people see the value in it, because many times what people come up with is amazing. Like, I've been talking to people who, they want to improve the world's mental health, like for men. So these are incredibly amazing ideas, but they are not connecting their products, their services to a specific problem. And I think that's even more important, they don't discredit all those misaligned beliefs, limiting beliefs, objections that people might have that no one teaches how to do except me. I mean, except a few people, which would then position that solution as the solution. Um, Everything, like I always say that any offer can be sold if you know what prevents people from getting to that offer, and then speak to that. So when, let's say, somebody says, oh, it's so much easier to get one-to-one clients, no one wants to work in groups with me, that's a messaging problem. That means you're not able to handle that objection that someone has when they say they prefer one-to-one instead of groups. If you see some of the big people in all across all industries, they're not doing one-to-ones. Their one-to-ones are like 20K, 50K per person. They prefer to do group because that's how they leverage their time, their energy, their attention, and then make a bigger impact, make a bigger income. So all of these things are a question of how you handle those objections that come up when people say, oh, is this going to work for me? Which is, again, where people overlook this whole aspect of how can I speak in a way that then fills in people's holes so they come into my program more educated, and then selling is no more question anymore, because that's the next logical step when they have all their misaligned beliefs removed.
Yeah. Um, yeah, I think objection handling is definitely something you have to learn with sales. And I agree, if your beliefs are off, like that can affect how you respond to people, especially the type of people that you and I speak to as these conscious creators, because I think they identify as honest people. And if if they haven't ironed that out for themselves, like they're going to just freeze up when that objection comes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a skill, and also understanding how it's about positioning, and how I had an objection coming up on one of my webinars that said, from a therapist who said, but I don't want to tell people that it's fast. And I'm not, that's not what you have to say. What your goal with your messaging is to tell people that it's the fastest, most efficient, most energy saving, best solution that they could ever find out of all the other options that they are considering. And that's another thing people don't seem to be aware of, how we are not the only people that our ideal clients are considering working with. Yes, there's like soul connection and so many other things that can come up, but at the same time, how do you communicate that your solution is what they will never find anywhere, and it's the best they could ever find because it's so specifically dealing with their specific problems? And an easy way to talk about that without saying mine is the best, come to me, right, buy from me, is to talk about why others are not working. One of my students just got his first client like after 2 weeks in our membership for like more than $2,000, euros actually. And all he did was talking about how therapy doesn't work, and how what he's doing, which is more like working with the body, energetics, and all these kind of other things, is a lot more powerful way for someone to experience change and transformation. Did he talk about how he's the best and he has the solution? No, but he planted seeds by talking about how the other solutions they are considering do not work.
Yeah. Yeah. Positioning. I like it. I mean, I think that's a great strategy. So, for the people listening, I would try that out if you haven't already.
Take notes and
Yeah.
implement.
Speaking of the people watching, we would love to hear from you. So if you have any questions or comments, like drop them in the comments. We'll pull it up on the screen, or you can comment if you actually want to get on camera. We encourage that as well. So just say, I'd like to join, and I'll message you the link to join us here.
Exactly. We'd love to see you guys. We'd love to meet you here on the screen, spread some of the news about you as well, and can give you some online what is it called? A retail. What is it called? Shoot. It's like some online space where you can be visible. So
Oh, okay.
visibility. Yeah, that was the word I was looking for. Real estate.
Real estate. There you go.
Yeah, I think the biggest one that people have is the wirings, right? How I'm only good enough if things go well, and otherwise I'm just gonna be looking for evidence to see that I'm not good enough. This wasn't meant for me. Maybe I should give up. My parents were right. I should go back to my 9 to 5. And then sometimes they give up. And when we are able to attack those wirings, because it's nothing else but neuroscience, you're able to go a lot faster, fail faster, and learn a lot more. The people who go faster are the ones who are able to make more aligned decisions in a shorter amount of time. They're not the ones waiting, overthinking, licking their wounds for years. And if this sounds a bit insensitive, life is happening, and it's ultimately we are where our attention is. So yes, we can experience grief, we can experience a breakup, we can experience all kinds of other things outside of business that can put a stop on our business. But life is going on, and we are where our attention is.
Yeah. Yeah. I think just going back to the topic of, when momentum dies, um, I think it's important to just continue to put one foot in front of the other. It's like that expression, life goes on, it goes on because it has to, right? Like you wake up and there's life, right? And I think it's the same thing if you're serious about having an online business. You have to treat it that way as well. Like the show must go on is something I was laughing to myself this morning when I was thinking about getting on here, not feeling well. I was like, well, the show must go on. Like I gotta show up. So, I just put one foot in front of the other, and sat down at the desk and turned on the camera. And I think you're going to have these dips. You're going to have the times where you're questioning things. And that's, as we've stated earlier, part of the process. You're going to adapt, but you have to continue to have content and visibility in those dips as well. You can't just disappear unless it's a planned, vacation or something like that you've made your audience aware of.
Yeah, I mean, people never think about repurposing. Like, there's a very small likelihood that the same person, when you repost something that you posted 3 months ago and it got some great traction, and in those few weeks, what's the guarantee that the same person will see it? Almost zero. And I think that's where all of these like B-rolls that we can record in advance and everything else when I'm video coaching for like short form videos, have B-rolls ready, have things ready when you're seen working, where you're seen helping, when you're seen with your community, so that on those bad days, on those bad weeks, you get to still be sharing content.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, all the big creators do it. You see them posting like podcast clips from like 2 years ago. I
Yeah.
think they're still
Like
using that.
value is still value, and it
Yeah.
doesn't have to be like the most up to date, most recent stuff all the time. As long as it helps someone else out there, it might change their lives, it might change the way they look at things. Why not? And I think um, that's part of being strategic about business and understanding that our work, which is, I think, the biggest lesson that everybody learns when they come out of an employment status, is that your work is not correlated to the amount of money you earn or the amount of impact you make. And it's about building those systems that allow you to take those breaks, allow you to put in those vacations, allow you to work through the different seasons. And, we can't forget our bodies as well. For example, if you're a woman and you have um, well, yeah, you need to work with your body as well. And there are certain things, systems you can implement that allow you to work with moon energy and how the cycles allow you to leverage different sides of the business at different stages of your period. So there's so many things that we can implement, but a lot of that comes down to how well we know ourselves, our reactions, our triggers, our subconscious beliefs, and then are able to act on them.
Yeah. At the beginning of the call, you mentioned you had some tools and things you wanted to share. I mean, you've shared a lot so far. Are there some other things that you haven't that you mentioned earlier?
I mean, probably the biggest one is focusing on rewiring those subconscious beliefs, right? Which many times people can't do on like by themselves. But ultimately, we all focus on like what more I need to add, just want to do more and more and more and more, do things. But we forget that there are so many invisible strings that hold us back. So, one of the things that makes my students go so fast and fail faster, because messaging is really about just putting stuff out there, experimenting with webinar titles, webinar topics, master classes, whatever resonates, tweaking the sales pages and everything else, is this 4-step method that I teach, which helps you basically make those neural connections atrophy when you no longer focus on them. So we don't just want to build skills, we want to unbuild those wirings of like, what are your beliefs about money? What are your beliefs about selling? What are your beliefs about yourself when things aren't going well? What are your beliefs about only having 2 people signing up on your webinar? So many of these things, and then look at both logically and also emotionally why that isn't true. Simply keep looking for evidence and then repeatedly focus on rewiring that thought with, I always tell my students, decide in advance. If you know your trigger, if you know when that thought is coming, things like, who the fuck is going to listen to me when I post this? Prepare a thought and rewire that thought, that experience, that reaction, which requires awareness, many times coaching, and hypnosis. There's so many different tools we could use. But if you keep reacting the same way, if you keep experiencing the same things, you're hitting the same walls. Sometimes it also comes down to hitting the same revenue ceiling. It is almost certain that there is a subconscious belief, an invisible string that holds you back. And if you don't remove that, you could work as much as you can. You cannot outperform your subconscious beliefs. So that would be the definitely the ultimate tool that I would share. And if anyone is more interested in what I just talked about, maybe you're hitting against a wall, you're feeling like no matter how much I work, there is no more money coming or anything else, then hit me in the DMs and I'd be very happy to chat with you.
Yeah. Yeah, I think everybody has subconscious beliefs that, they're unaware of. And the best thing about a coach is that they can observe you, right? we can all look up exercises to do in the gym on YouTube, but you don't know when your form is off. You get a personal trainer to correct your form. You need that those eyes on you that you can't see, the blind spots. And that's where a coach, that's where a trainer comes in and helps you iron those out and perform at your best.
Yeah, it's a soundboard, eventually helping you see yourself and see who you really are, which many times we're not aware of. So we
Yeah.
can change. If we don't know, if we don't know what we should change, then we don't know what to change. So there's no change, which is why awareness is so important.
Yeah. In the last couple minutes here, I mean, that I think was a nice ending, but if give you an opportunity if you have anything else you'd like to add before we close out the call.
Yeah, I think we've shared so much. But yeah, um, all I want to say is that just because something doesn't work out, this happens a lot more than you can possibly imagine. It's just people don't talk about it. People love flexing. They love talking about the wins. They love talking about when they did get a client, but no one talks about the days, the weeks, the months, the years when there was no change, no improvement, no wins, sort of in their business. So just because people don't talk about it, that doesn't mean something is wrong with you.
Yeah, absolutely. And people, yeah, they don't share their losses so much. Yeah, I learned about that when I first started investing in the stock market. Like that's something everybody will tell you when like they buy a stock and it goes way up, but they don't tell you when their portfolio is down. And I think it's the same thing with business and with creator economy. I think what you have to keep an eye out for is the people who are talking about all their big wins and stuff, not sharing those losses. A lot of times, those people don't stick around.
Yeah. I'm super suspicious when someone says they figured out life and they have financial freedom. I'm like, they are trying to sell me something. And I also encourage, like, we both work with leaders, we both work with purpose driven entrepreneurs. Be the one that also talks about those vulnerable moments. Be the one that shows the world an example of what it means to show up with dignity about your weaknesses, about your losses, about your biggest lessons. Obviously, not in the middle of this. Like, don't share when you're like currently struggling, but you could talk about your past struggles so that more people see that they are not alone. And there's
Yeah,
still not enough talked about this genuine, authentic vulnerability that is not like, oh my god, I'm just gonna cry, let me put the camera on and then have 500k follower likes on TikTok because I'm crying. That's not what we talk about. What we talk about is using vulnerability to lift off people's shame. There's so much shame. People think there's something wrong with them when they experience something because everybody just shares the highlight reels. So if you're listening to us and you are a heart led, purpose driven entrepreneur, choose to be the one who has the balls to show up as a real human with their struggles, their failures, and you're going to see how many more people are going to be relating to you.
yeah, and it just makes so much more sense to try and be where the problem is, right? If people are struggling, that's the problem you want to help solve.
Yeah.
And it's like you said, in hindsight, you don't. If you're in the middle of it, you don't have the solution for people.
Hmm.
But once you've gone through it and you can share how you got through it, now you have something that you can offer people. So,
Absolutely.
um, so
Yeah.
that's
And then this whole thing about shame, many people have problems, but if it's wrapped up in shame, they are likely not changing it. So, what's powerful about vulnerable stories is that people know that they have a problem and they will finally feel like there is a solution out there. So, they shouldn't be staying where they are. And you're likely able to turn that into your best advantage.
absolutely. All right, Chubby. Well, I think this was great. I think we covered a lot, and hopefully, you know, everyone who's watching, hopefully you got a lot out of it as well. You know, feel free to comment. You can still comment on the episode if you show up and watch it after the fact. You know, we'll see the comments and reply.
And
And
hats off for Andrew for still showing up in the middle of his allergy.
I think it's a cold, actually. I
Oh,
think
it's a cold.
yeah,
Yeah.
I thought it was allergies, but it looks a little too much. Anyway,
Anyway, so yeah, like
yeah,
I do appreciate you showing up and respecting people's time, and you know, these are the real leaders who come from the heart and say, I will show up the best way I can because my 100% today doesn't have to be what my 100% is on my best day, which I think is a great way to finish and remind people just to focus on that consistency.
yeah. All right, Chubby. All right, everyone. Thanks for joining us.
My
We'll be
pleasure.
back next week.